The necklace felt like a stolen secret in Maya's pocket, a cold, hard lump of shame that burned with every beat of her heart. But the real theft had happened moments before, a secret she had witnessed that tied her tongue and made her own innocence impossible to prove. It all started with a simple act of kindness. Maya, a quiet 14-year-old with a soulful artist's eyes, was the last one in the classroom after the recess bell. Her best friend Chloe, the popular, vibrant girl she'd known since childhood, had rushed off to the office, leaving her brand-new silver necklace, a birthday gift from her grandmother, spilling out of her messy backpack. Seeing it about to fall, Maya did what any good friend would do. She scooped it up to keep it safe. She slipped it into her hoodie pocket, a temporary holding place until Chloe returned. But then, the fire alarm blared, causing a chaotic evacuation that made her forget the necklace was even there. When they returned to class, the nightmare began. Chloe discovered her necklace was missing and erupted into hysterical tears. Their teacher, Mrs. Davison, a woman whose stern demeanor left little room for nuance, immediately launched an investigation. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Maya, the last one left behind. The accusation was swift and public. "Empty your pockets, Maya, now!" The command echoed in the silent room. Every pair of eyes turned to her, and in that moment, Maya froze. The secret in her pocket felt like a trap. To explain why she had it would be to reveal what she had seen Chloe do before recess. Not just shove the necklace in her bag, but slip a folded, forbidden answer key for the upcoming final exam into her math textbook. Chloe had cheated, and Maya had seen it all. If she spoke up now to save herself, she would destroy her best friend. So she chose silence. A silence that Mrs. Davison interpreted as guilt. "Since you won't cooperate, you can sit at the front of the class until the principal arrives," the teacher declared, publicly branding her a thief. The weight of her decision crushed her. She was protecting Chloe, but with every passing second, her own reputation was being shattered. The first twist wasn't that she was innocent of theft. It was that her silence was an act of loyalty, a sacrifice that was about to cost her everything. As Maya sat in the chair of shame, the minutes stretched into an eternity of humiliation. Mrs. Davison continued the lesson as if nothing was wrong, while Maya's world had collapsed. She could feel the outline of the necklace through the fabric, a constant reminder of her impossible choice. She looked at Chloe, whose tear-streaked face showed not an ounce of the understanding Maya desperately needed. Instead, Chloe's eyes held a different emotion, a flicker of panic that went beyond the missing necklace. She was terrified Maya would talk. This was the real betrayal. Chloe was allowing her to take the fall, too scared to confess her own, greater transgression. The classroom door creaked open, but it wasn't the principal. It was the school's art teacher, Ms. Evans, a gentle woman known for her keen observation. She sensed the tension immediately. "Is everything all right, Helen?" she asked Mrs. Davison. "We've had an incident of theft," Mrs. Davison replied coldly, not taking her eyes off Maya. "We're handling it." Ms. Evans's gaze lingered on Maya, on her slumped shoulders and the raw fear in her eyes. She saw not a guilty child, but a terrified one. "It's a serious accusation," Ms. Evans said, her voice calm but firm. "Are we absolutely sure?" Her simple question planted a seed of doubt, a tiny crack in Mrs. Davison's certainty. It was the first time an adult had even considered that the story might be more complicated. For Maya, it was a lifeline, a glimpse of hope in her suffocating silence. But would it be enough? So there Maya sat, accused of a crime she didn't commit, holding a secret that could clear her name but destroy her best friend. But what she didn't know was that someone else in the room held the key to the whole mystery, and they were about to speak up. The silence in the room was about to be shattered, revealing a truth far more complex and painful than a simple missing necklace. Ms. Evans did not leave. She stood quietly at the back of the classroom, a silent witness to the unfolding injustice. Her presence was a calm, unmoving rock in the turbulent sea of the classroom's atmosphere. It made Mrs. Davison visibly uncomfortable. The history teacher's shoulders were rigid, and her movements became sharp and impatient as she tried to continue her lesson on the Treaty of Versailles. The words about post-war consequences rang with a bitter, unintended irony. Every few seconds, Mrs. Davison's eyes would flicker towards the art teacher, a silent demand for her to leave that went unheeded. The students, sensing the shift in power, were no longer just staring at Maya. Their attention was divided, flicking between the girl in the chair of shame and the quiet woman in the doorway who seemed to be challenging the teacher's authority without saying a word. Maya felt the shift too. The absolute, crushing weight of her isolation lessened by a fraction. She wasn't completely alone anymore. Someone was watching, and that someone wasn't looking at her with accusation. Ms. Evans's gaze was thoughtful, concerned. It was the look you give a puzzle you're trying to solve, not a criminal you've already convicted. The art teacher took a slow, deliberate step further into the room. The squeak of her shoe on the linoleum was deafening in the quiet. "Helen," Miss Evans said, her voice still soft, but now carrying clearly across the room. "It's a very serious accusation to level against a student. Are we absolutely sure we have the full story?" Mrs. Davison stopped mid-sentence about Woodrow Wilson. Her face tightened. "The facts are clear, Lena. The necklace was in her bag. Now it's not. She was the only one here. She's been obstructive and dishonest." She gestured vaguely toward Maya. "The evidence speaks for itself." "Does it?" Ms. Evans asked, her head tilting slightly. She wasn't confrontational. She was Socratic, gently guiding towards a different conclusion. "Sometimes, what looks like evidence of one thing is actually evidence of something else entirely. I've found that teenagers, especially, often act out of a complicated sense of loyalty or fear, not malice." Her words were a key, sliding into the lock of Maya's fear. They gave a name to the turmoil inside her. Loyalty. Fear. Yes, that was exactly it. Miss Evans's eyes then settled fully on Maya. They were warm, brown, and held a deep, unwavering patience. "Maya," she said, her voice dropping into a more intimate tone, though the whole class could still hear. "Sometimes, when we're scared, we freeze. It's a natural reaction, but your voice matters. This is your classroom too. Is there something you'd like to say, something you haven't been able to?" The invitation was so gentle, so different from Mrs. Davison's demands. It wasn't, "Empty your pockets." It was, "Is there something you'd like to say?" It offered agency. It offered dignity. Maya's eyes darted from Ms. Evans's kind face to Chloe's. Chloe's expression was no longer just panicked, it was pleading. A silent, desperate scream for Maya to keep quiet, to take the fall. But in that plea, Maya saw the truth of their friendship. It was conditional. It was based on Maya's silence, on her willingness to be the sacrificial lamb. The loyalty she had been clinging to felt suddenly cheap, a currency offered by a desperate person. A single hot tear escaped and traced a path down Maya's cheek. It was followed by another. She wasn't sobbing. It was a quiet, steady leak of all the fear and pressure that had been building inside her. She looked back at Ms. Evans, who gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was permission. It was belief. With hands that trembled so violently she could barely control them, Maya slowly reached into the front pocket of her hoodie. The movement was agonizingly slow, every eye in the room tracking her hand. The rustle of the fabric was the only sound. She felt the cool metal of the chain, closed her fingers around it, and pulled it out. The delicate silver C dangled in the air, spinning slowly, catching the fluorescent light and throwing tiny specks of brilliance around the room. A collective, sharp intake of breath rippled through the students. "I found it on the floor," Maya whispered, her voice raspy from disuse and emotion. "After Chloe left, it fell out of her bag. I picked it up to keep it safe. I was going to give it back." She held it out, not toward Mrs. Davison, but toward Chloe. An offering, a testament to her original good intention. Mrs. Davison's mouth fell open. Her confident facade crumbled, replaced by a flustered, red-faced confusion. She had been so certain. The narrative she had constructed was simple and clean: thief. Now it was messy and complicated. You should have said something immediately," she sputtered, the blame already shifting from the act to the timing. It was a weak, defensive move, and everyone in the room felt it, but the revelation of the necklace was only the first layer of the truth being peeled back. Before Mrs. Davison could regain her footing, a small, nervous voice spoke up from the back corner of the room, near the window. "I saw it." All heads turned. It was Liam, a quiet, observant boy who spent most of his time drawing in the margins of his notebooks. He was shrinking under the sudden attention, his face pale, but he continued, his voice gaining a shred of strength. "I saw Chloe put the necklace in her bag before she left, and I saw her put the math answer key in her book too." The second, devastating twist landed not like a crack of thunder, but like a depth charge, exploding silently and sending shockwaves through the very foundation of the room. The air was sucked out. For a moment, there was pure, uncomprehending silence. Then, the implications hit. Chloe didn't just cry out. She let out a wail, a raw, guttural sound of pure shame and exposure. She collapsed forward onto her desk, her body shaking with a new, authentic kind of sob. The necklace was forgotten. The real crime was out. She hadn't just been a victim of theft, she had been the architect of a cover-up. Her tears earlier weren't just for a lost gift. They were a performance, a calculated move to paint herself as the victim and direct. Suspicion away from her own. Much more serious. Transgression. She had used Maya's loyalty as a shield. Mrs. Davison was utterly paralyzed. Her case wasn't just evaporated, it had been inverted. The prime suspect was the victim of a cruel manipulation, and the actual victim was, in fact, a cheat and a liar. The social order of the classroom had been completely overturned in a matter of 60 seconds. Ms. Evans was the first to move. She didn't go to Mrs. Davison, she didn't go to Chloe. She walked straight to the front of the room and knelt beside Maya's chair, placing herself at eye level with the girl. She ignored the spinning vortex of drama behind her. "You were protecting your friend," Ms. Evans said, her voice so low it was almost a whisper for Maya's ears only. "You were carrying her secret to protect her. That is a heavy, heavy burden to carry alone. And it is a brave, though painful thing to do." Maya finally broke. The dam holding back her emotions shattered. She cried, great, heaving sobs that shook her small frame. They were tears of relief, of vindication, but also of profound grief. She was grieving the betrayal, the loss of a friendship she thought was unshakable, the public humiliation, and the weight of the secret she had finally been freed from. Ms. Evans didn't try to shush her. She simply placed a steadying hand on Maya's shoulder, a grounding presence in the storm. The principal, Mr. Higgins, was summoned. The rest of the class period was cancelled. The official, procedural part of the ordeal began. Maya and Chloe were led separately to the principal's office. Their parents were called. In Mr. Higgins's office, with her mother sitting beside her, holding her hand tightly, Maya told the whole story again, from the beginning. She told him about seeing Chloe cheat, about picking up the necklace, about the terrible, impossible choice she felt she had to make. Her mother listened, her face a storm of anger, heartbreak, and fierce, protective love. "Oh, my brave girl," she whispered, over and over. Chloe, in a separate meeting with her own parents, confessed everything. The pressure, the fear of failing the math final, the desperate decision to cheat, and the even more desperate decision to let Maya take the blame when the necklace went missing. The consequences were severe. Academic probation for Chloe, a 0 on the math final, and mandatory sessions with the school counselor. But the real consequences were social and emotional. The news spread through the school like wildfire. Overnight, Chloe's social capital evaporated. She was now the girl who cheated and betrayed her best friend. Maya, meanwhile, was viewed with a new, complex mixture of pity and respect. People understood the impossible position she had been in. In the days that followed, Maya and Chloe existed in a painful, awkward orbit around each other. They didn't speak. The bond they had shared was broken, replaced by a chasm of betrayal and hurt. A week after the incident, Chloe approached Maya at her locker. Her eyes were red-rimmed and downcast. "I'm sorry, Maya," she mumbled, her voice thick. "I was just so scared. I didn't mean for any of that to happen." Maya looked at her former best friend. The anger was still there, a hot coal in her chest, but it was now mixed with a strange sense of pity. "I know you were scared," Maya said, her voice quiet but steady. "But you let me be scared too. You let them think I was a thief." There was no dramatic reconciliation, no heartfelt makeup, just a sad, quiet acknowledgement of a fracture that was too deep to mend quickly, if ever. They moved on, but as separate entities, their friendship a casualty of the whole terrible affair. The experience changed Maya fundamentally. The quiet, shy girl began to find her voice. She started speaking up more in class. She spent more time in the art room with Ms. Evans, who became a quiet mentor. She learned a brutal but essential lesson about the world, that silence could indeed be a betrayal, not just of others, but of oneself. She learned that true loyalty requires honesty, and that a friendship built on secrets is a house built on sand. The necklace eventually returned to Chloe, became a symbol not of a birthday, but of a turning point. For Maya, it was a reminder of the day she learned that carrying the truth, no matter how heavy, was always lighter than carrying a lie. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to stay silent to protect someone, but to find the courage to speak up, and in doing so, protect yourself. The silence had threatened to betray her, but in the end, it was her own voice, however tremulously used, that set her free and taught her the profound strength of her own character.